cool. It's more of an opportunity for them to ask questions and maybe gain a little more of a knowledge base and to be able to look at the genre in a little bit of a new way. And just realize that, for the non-geeks in the audience, that maybe there are some deeper concepts and ideas and things worth applying and thinking about in the context of real life that they can kind of take away.
That's awesome.
So far we've done probably 10 films, I think. Anything from, Batman versus Superman and Civil War to Star Trek to X-Men to Arrival by Denis Villeneuve, who directed the new Blade Runner. And we've done Doctor Strange, we've done Guardians 2. We did Rogue One. I mean, you name it, we try to do it. We don't necessarily get a chance to do all of the ones we want, but for the most part, we've gotten to do the ones we want, and it continues to go well. Fortunately for us, it's one of those things where, regardless of whether it's 100 people in the audience or 5 people in the audience, we love it enough that we're going to do it no matter what, because if nothing else, it's an excuse for us to be able to have that discussion that we're going to have anyway, but to have it in a theater on a stage.
That's really cool. So talk to me then a little bit about what sort of was your gateway drug into geek culture to begin with. What's your earliest memory of something that just sort of really captured your imagination and got you into geek culture in general?
So it depends on who you ask.
Okay.
Because the memory that I have, there are 2 of them. I remember as a 5-year-old, I was in my living room at my parents' house all by myself, and I was essentially attempting to try to do Luke Skywalker's walk the plank stunt from Return of the Jedi off my parents' couch.
Great.
So, right? So I know that by 5 years old, I had watched all of the original trilogy and knew it well enough to know to try to attempt some of these things. And so there's that, but there's also there's a now kind of immortalized legendary picture of me at probably 4 or 5 with pajamas from the Silverhawks 80s cartoon show that was kind of the companion to Thundercats, and the pajamas actually had Quicksilver's wings under the arms, and so I remember when I was given them, I'd put them on, and I was kind of terrified to put my arms out and let the wings show because I thought I might fly away.
That's awesome.
So those are my recollections. Others in my family, if you were to ask, they would tell you that it all started actually younger than that, because my parents and some extended family showed me Star Wars: A New Hope to me when I was 2. So this would have been probably somewhere around 1984.
Yeah.
And the way my aunt actually tells the story is that from the get-go, from the moment, the film starts and the Devastator and Tantive 4 show up on screen in combination with John Williams' music, I was hooked as a toddler. And, here I am, 30-some years later in my mid-30s, and Star Wars is still my, first love of fandom,
So then, segueing very neatly into the next bit of what I want to talk about with you, would you say that Star Wars then is like your primary geek specialty?
Yeah. Even though it could be said that I have a few, my primary one that I've probably been digging into the longest is the Galaxy Far, Far Away.
Okay. So in terms of the extended universe that was being built around Star Wars, then throughout the 90s and into the aughts, before the new films were being produced, and we realized that all of that stuff was going to fall out of canon.
Yes.
How much did you keep up with all of the novels and the comic books and things that were going on throughout that time period?
As far as the novels go, I have most of that still on my shelves.
Wow. Okay.
I started probably 11 or 12 years old with the novels shortly after Zahn would have written and completed the Thrawn trilogy, and I mean I still read that stuff. I probably have 12 or 13 of the novels from the old canon that I have that I never really was able to get to. The only thing that I didn't really zero in on and collect was actually the New Jedi Order series, the Yuzhan Vong War.
Yeah.
Because I read the first one in late high school when R.A. Salvatore wrote that first novel in the series. And the fact that they, spoiler alert, that they killed Chewbacca, even though they did it in a really cool way, and the fact that he was, saving one of Han and Leia's kids, and they had to destroy a planet to, kill Chewie. At that point, I was like, I don't know if I want to continue into this. And
you don't want to live in a Star Wars universe where Chewie isn't co-piloting the Millennium Falcon?
That's correct. I was like, I just don't know if I can do this. And so I actually thought about buying them all when you and I were in college together, but I never got around to it. And then it just, the EU kind of moved on and, moved into the Legacy era with Jaqen, going dark side and becoming Darth Caedus and onto Fate of the Jedi and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
after the New Jedi Order series is kind of where it dropped off for me. And I'm kind of interested to know where it all went, because I know that eventually Jason and Jaina had their big throwdown, and
yes,
and
they did.
But I don't really actually know how that all played out.
So,
although like you, I'm really familiar with a lot of that the extended universe stuff from that whole era, because Star Wars is definitely one of my big things also. But aside from Star Wars, what else are you super into?
Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth and Tolkien. I've read.
Do you speak any Elvish?
I can't, unfortunately.
Okay.
If there was one,
I'm just trying to gauge your actual nerd level in terms of Tolkien, because I know there are super Tolkien crazy people who can speak some Elvish.
If there was a single language I was going to attempt to learn and thought I could learn, it actually would be Elvish, just because I think that would be cool.
You mean in terms of fictional languages?
No, I mean just languages, period.
Oh. Okay.
I'm not good at languages, so it'd be hard. But if there was one single language, period, that I could learn, it wouldn't be French or German or Spanish or whatever. It'd probably be Elvish.
That's awesome.
Just because it sounds cool and
Yeah, it does.
But no, I really enjoy Tolkien. I mean, I've read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings a number of times. It took me 3 tries to get through the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
But I finally made it through. I haven't really progressed too much beyond that. I do have the new Beren and Luthien. I actually bought it. I actually bought it in Blackwell's bookstore in Oxford this summer, which is a bookstore that C.S. Lewis and Tolkien would have frequented together. And I mean, I like Tolkien for Tolkien and what he created, but I really like him for the impact that he had on C.S. Lewis, who wrote Chronicles of Narnia. And I actually spent some time over in the UK this summer, kind of tracing not only mainly Lewis's life, but also some of the places where his life intersected with with Tolkien's. In
I was going to
Oxford.
actually ask you about that trip. Tell us the single coolest experience of that trip for you.
Oh man, the single coolest experience of that trip had to have been the very last day. We were in Oxford for a few days, and on the very last day, we went to Magdalen College, where C.S. Lewis taught and lectured for close to 30 years. And at Magdalen College, there's a couple of courtyards you go through, and one of the courtyards contains the building where he would have had his rooms and actually lived and taught and whatnot. But next to that particular area in Magdalen College is a nature walk called Addison's Walk, and the reason that is such a big deal is because in the fall, in I think September of 1931, Lewis and Tolkien were hanging out and were walking Addison's Walk. It's this big oval that's probably a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles total. And they were walking one fall evening, and they were talking about the nature of myth, the three of them. And because Lewis and Tolkien became friends mainly because they had a mutual love for Norse mythology. You could say that they were, maybe some of the original, Norse mythology fanboys. And they would get together, and Tolkien had this group called the Coal Biters that would talk about Norse mythology together. And so one night, the three of them, Lewis and Tolkien and Hugo Dyson, are walking along, and they're talking about the nature of myth, and Tolkien kind of posits this question to Lewis, and he says, so Tolkien was a pretty staunch Orthodox Catholic. Had been of that faith persuasion his whole life, mainly because of his mother. And both mom and dad had passed away when he was really young, and Lewis grew up kind of Anglican Church of England, and we actually got to go see the church in Belfast where he would have grown up in and where his parents would have attended, because his grandfather was actually essentially the vicar of that particular church.
Oh, I'd forgotten that.
In Northern Ireland, outside of Belfast. St. Mark's of Dunley, I think, is what it's called. The other name for it is the Lion on the Hill. And if you think about what, one of the things that Lewis is known for is Chronicles of Narnia and creating Aslan, and there's a lot of different things. There are a couple things connected to the church that make you wonder, hey, maybe this is where he got some of his inspiration for Aslan.
Interesting.
So back to Addison's Walk. They're talking about the nature of myth, and Tolkien says to Lewis, he says, hey, how come when you encounter something mythic, something fantastic, something miraculous in mythology, say a story of Balder and the myth of the dying god that seems to pop up in various mythologies, you accept it without any sort of pushback. But when you encounter something like that in the Bible, say in the story of Jesus, you react negatively and almost violently negatively. Why is that? And Lewis didn't have that great of an answer, because Lewis had gone from a childlike kind of Christian Anglican faith to a somewhat intellectually militant atheism during his teens and 20s after the death of his mother, and when he had been tutored privately by a gentleman by the name of Kirkpatrick that he refers to as the Great Knock. And Kirkpatrick's intellectual atheism and intellectual rigor was a draw for Lewis and had a lot to do with the man that Lewis would become.